So we are up to the eighth statement, the eighth Mishnah of chapter 2 of Ethics of the Fathers in our third time around. We do not move quickly because we want to really integrate whatever we learn. In this eighth Mishnah, a rabbi, a very famous rabbi named Yochanan ben Zakkai said, if you've learned much Torah, do not claim special credit for yourself, because this is the reason why you are created. And what does that have to do with us? If you've learned much Torah, do not think you're so special because you've learned much Torah. This is why you're created. I think the extrapolation for ourselves, you could say, well, I don't know how much Torah I've learned. I don't know if I've learned much Torah. But as a general perspective on life, if you look at yourself, oh, wow, I'm a Noahide. And it's truly, oh, wow, it's an amazing, special, wonderful thing. Oh, wow, I have an authentic relationship with God. I'm so blessed, which you are blessed. I'm so fortunate, which you are fortunate. Those are all good. But when it starts going into the more sense of self, you know what I'm saying? Like feeling a little superior to people around you who don't have the truth, then you fell into a real pit. And it's a very delicate balance. Because on one hand, you should feel so special that you were chosen by God, that you're a Noahide. You should. And I hope every one of you do. And I hope everyone here feels like, I'm so blessed. I'm so fortunate. What did I do to deserve this? What did my ancestors do that I deserve this? It's the best gift you could have. It's the best gift any human can have. So I hope everyone feels so special that God chose them to be a Noahide. At the same time, there's that subtle line between feeling so blessed and feeling superior. And that's the line Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is warning about. Because you could say, well, I just not going to make a big deal internally about being a Noahide, because I don't want to feel, better than anyone else because I'm a Noahide. No! You should make a very big deal internally that you're a Noahide. You should wake up every morning with a smile on your face. And if you don't have a smile on your face, think of who you are and think of your blessings that you have this relationship to God, and the smile should naturally be on your face. So of course, it's so important that you stand up straighter, taller, feel so blessed, feel so fortunate, feel so privileged. I mean, there's only like 8 billion mankind. And from the 8 billion mankind, how many today are fortunate enough to know about God and be a Noahide and serve him? I don't know the numbers. I don't know any of the numbers. I don't know if anyone here knows the numbers, but whatever it is, it's a minuscule fraction of a percentage. And you were so chosen. Every one of you here was so chosen. So that is such a special thing when you're down. Because of course we're human, so we sometimes get down. Think about it, and it should pull you up. Does anyone do this already? Like if they're feeling a little down, they just think, I was chosen by God. Who in this world knows about Noahides? And God chose me that I should be privy, that I could serve him this way. Wow. Anyone here does this already? Or in your own words, the same concept? Natalie? Anyone else?
I was trying not to be first, but no, so that's a great idea. Actually, that's what I should do. What I do when I'm feeling down, I don't know if I can think that well ahead, but I do play some of the like Hebrew music that I like. There's one that Benny Friedman has that says it's thinking about thanking, and it's very peppy and it's very catchy, and it's perfect because it's saying if we stop and thank God for all of our blessings, we would start and never end, and it's perfect.
That's very good too. I mean, I know for myself, I feel the same. I go through that same thought in terms of my life. I feel so like if I'm, maybe just not feeling like my best space. And I think of like, wow, God chose me. What's, how many Jews are there in this world? And then from those Jews, how many Jews know God and serve God and have the opportunity to share God with others? Also a fraction of such a tiny number, probably like the same tiny number as Noahides. And God chose me that way. And when I think that, it's like, wow, I'm so blessed. I'm blessed with what's real. There's lots of blessings in this world. And of course, we want all blessings, and we should all have blessings of health and family and emotion and relationships and support and finances, of course. But this is the most critical core blessing. This blessing means you and God can be one. And that's like the biggest blessing there could be. That's the most significant blessing there could be, you and God. So on one hand, I would encourage everyone to make that part of their daily meditations, mantras, thoughts, whatever you want to call it, refocusing points. Whatever else is going on in my life, God shows me. He and I can be one. I know so few in this world know Mashiach is coming, the redemption is coming, then everyone will know, and then I'll be able to be a teacher for everyone else. But at this point, so few know, and God chose me to be one of those few. Wow. 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 Why? Some of you might know why. Many of you have no clue why you merited. Why you merited to be chosen. So on one hand, I think it's really important to milk that tremendous reservoir of feeling so blessed and special because you were chosen, and that's a rare thing in this world. And at the same time, not to feel superior to anyone else who was not so chosen. Because when you think of it as chosen, it takes away the ego in it, so to speak. If you think, oh yeah, well, I'm a truth seeker and I sought and found and searched and pushed, it's sort of like easier to get into an ego space. But when you think of it like, I was chosen. There are other truth seekers in the world and they never got to this. Maybe they saw all the flaws in Christianity and became atheists, Maybe became agnostics, became I don't know what, became cultural Christian like everyone else in America. I was chosen. I'm not smarter than everyone else. There's definitely people smarter than me that aren't Noahides. I'm sure there are people more spiritual than me that aren't Noahides. I'm sure there are people that have maybe better character traits and aren't Noahides. But God chose me to be a Noahide. So when you think of it that way, it's not like, oh, yeah, like all the people around me that are not Noahides, you automatically feel a sense of superiority because it's so special and precious and amazing that you're a Noahide. But if you keep it focused as a God-centered choice, for some reason, God chose me. Wow, I'm actually humbled by that thought because it's not my merits. What merits did I have then? Maybe now I have merits that I am a Noahide. But what merits did I have that brought me to be a Noahide? God chose me. So he chose me. He didn't choose my neighbor for whatever God-known reason. It's not like I'm better. I might not be better. God chose me. So you could feel so blessed that you're a Noahide, at the same time so humbled that you're a Noahide, and therefore you don't feel at all superior to anyone else who's not a Noahide. You just feel so grateful to God that he chose you. The only clue we know, as I've taught before, is that every Noahide is a descendant of those babies who Sarah nursed. If you remember the biblical concept that after Isaac was born, people were skeptical that Sarah was the mother. I mean, she's 90 years old. And they were skeptical that this baby came from Abraham and Sarah. So God did a few things that everyone should know. One thing he did was he made Isaac look like a copy image, literally, of Abraham. So there's no doubt who the father is. And he also, when they had a party celebrating the birth of Isaac, all of the nobles came because Abraham was like, an incredibly noble person. So all of the nobles were like his, privy or would be the ones that would be invited to a party Abraham would be throwing. And they all came with their wives, with their babies, and every single one of them forgot their nursemaids. In those days, there's no formula. So a noble woman didn't nurse. She had a nursemaid who nursed. So therefore, the noble woman couldn't nurse because she didn't nurse. And every one of them, hand of God, forgot their nursemaid. So all these nobles are coming with their wives, with their babies, without any nursemaids. And suddenly all the babies are hungry, but nobody can nurse except Sarah, because Sarah was nursing Isaac. So every one of these babies, all of these hungry, screeching, noble babies, they all were nursed by Sarah, which proved to everyone, well, we see Abraham's the father. I mean, he's a part carbon copy, and we see Sarah's the mother. She's nursing. But it went much deeper than that. And we're told that from those children who were nursed by Sarah's milk came the Noahides. So every Noahide traces back to one of those noble babies. Go back like some 4,000 years, you all come from very noble at that time stock, because it was the nobles of the world that came to the party. It was their children who were nursed by Sarah, and every Noahide traces back to a baby that ingested Sarah's milk. That's what gave the ability to be a Noahide. So that I know is why you were chosen. But more details than that, why you, not your cousins, not your siblings, not your parents, God chose. So we should feel very, very grateful, special, blessed, and humbled that God chose us. Not superior to anyone that God didn't choose, but very grateful that he chose us. That's what I think is a very strong lesson we can learn from this saying of the fathers. Any reflections on this? So Natalie said she hadn't thought of it before, but now she would like to put her mind in that direction as her, place of joy and emotional support. Anyone else has any thoughts on these ideas? How it would apply to you personally?
I think being a Noahide is a responsibility. I mean, it's a blessing, of course, and I'm grateful, but we also have to remember we have responsibilities to help others and, set an example as a Noahide for people that maybe weren't chosen to be Noahides. Maybe they would want to become a Noahide and follow with us.
Absolutely. Every one of you is God's billboard. Every one of you. Even if you're like, well, nobody around here is interested. Well, you're the only one that knows in your area. You have to be a very big billboard. And you never know who's paying attention. And you never know who's going to think about it. And maybe it won't be right after they see you that they make a life choice. Maybe it'll be after something else happens and something else happens and something else happens. And maybe they're going to move on and you're never going to know. But every one of you is God's billboard. Sabra's absolutely right. And that's just even being passive, being yourself and serving God. How much more so when you talk to people and try to bring in God and try to bring in the concepts. Because yes, where you live, maybe exclusive of you, there's no one to tell them. And even if there's a Chabad house a mere 40 minutes away, but the Chabad house doesn't have contact with these people, but you do. So yes, Sabra is 100% correct. It's a blessing, it's a privilege, and it's, of course, an awesome God-ordained responsibility to be God's billboard, to be his voice in your area, by your life to bring people closer to God, and by your words. By words that should inspire others that they too could be a Noahide. Absolutely. Anyone else? Any other thoughts on this?
Before you mentioned the humility and that, and I had wrote it down while you were speaking, humility, God chose me. How I started, I didn't see no burning bush in that, but it just seemed like God was preparing. There's one rabbi that said, you went through the things that you went through to get to where you are now. And that meant a lot to me, the things that, it's like a movie thing. And I go, and this week, I don't know why, it's been just different memories and stuff like that, and going, why? Because I didn't know anything about being Noahide and reading, the Tanakh and that, and thinking, oh, I can't, I thought about, trying to learn the Hebrew language, and I go, can I? I mean, this point in my life in that, but where God has brought me in, and yes, the humility that God has seemingly brought me out of the wilderness and to taste that manna, that honey, and I am truly grateful, and meeting the people that, learning out of different books and that, and reading of Torah and that in the lessons. It's just, it blows my mind,
It's
at times.
interesting what you're saying, because I was just talking to someone about that yesterday, how God has a very long range vision. We have a very short vision, like about this far. And God's vision is years and years before God puts things in place for what's supposed to emerge. And that's true, Linda. You're seeing this in your life. Honestly, it's true for every one of our lives. is true for the world. We actually learned this lesson from yesterday's Torah portion, because in yesterday's Torah portion, which was a double portion, the beginning of the first of the 2 Torah portions, we speak of a war. I'll make this brief because it could be a longer concept. I just want to explain this idea you were alluding to. We speak of a war with a country, a nation, a people called Midian that had started up with the Jewish people, and they had brought them to sin. And after all that mess was over, God told Moses, okay, now you have to avenge, really God's revenge on the Midianites for what they did to bring the Jews to sin against God. And it's sort of like a holy war. It wasn't like a regular war where you just amass a large army. The Jews were some 3 million people, some 600,000 men, and they only took an army of 12,000. 600,000 men, they took an army of 12,000, 1,000 from each tribe. It's going to be this holy war. And they go and they completely defeat this whole people of Midian, and they come back with an enormous amount of spoils. 840,000 total of animals and of humans. And God gives very specific laws what to do with the spoils, 840,000 worth. And he says, split it in half. Half goes to the soldiers, half goes to the rest of the Jewish people. From the soldiers' portion, 1 in 500 of each item goes to the high priest. From the Jewish people's portion, 1 in 50 goes to anyone who's from the tribe of Levite, the Levite tribe. Okay, that's simple instructions. It takes like 2 verses. But in the Torah, which does not waste words, the Torah enumerates every single species, the sheep and the cattle and the goats, whatever it was, exactly the numbers. And then the Torah speaks of the split, exactly the numbers, and the 1 in 500, exactly the numbers. So we keep reviewing these numbers, many, many verses worth. And the question is what do we need this for? You told us the overarching rules, split it in half, and the soldiers 1 in 500 to the high priest, and the Jews 1 in 50 to the Levites. That would take about 2 verses, done. Why does the Torah that wastes no words enumerate again and again and again the numbers? And the Bible explains that the Torah is really highlighting something here. If you look at the numbers, it's so amazing because there's no spare change. The number splits perfectly in half to the soldiers, half to the Jews. Every single group of this type of animal, of this type of animal, of this type of animal, of the spoils splits evenly in half. And then from the amount that the soldiers got, every single group, you have this even 1 in 500 for the high priest. And by the Jew side, you have this even 1 in 50 for the Levites. That makes no sense. It's not a splitting the sea miracle. It's like a covert, and then you think about it, overt miracle. And even if somehow all the numbers worked initially, just think how long it took to tabulate and count and account for 840,000 pieces of spoils. That was weeks and weeks. So by the time they started and by the time they finished, none of those animals died. Like it didn't shift the numbers at all from their first calculation to their final calculation? No. Was that again, breaking the sea miracle? It was a covert miracle. Why? The Rebbe says, because nothing should obstruct us from keeping a commandment. And the commandment was to split it in half. So if there was change and it wasn't even split, what do we do with these? We're not keeping the commandment. And if from the soldiers' pieces, it didn't evenly work out to 1 in 500, there'd be a few animals changed. Let's say you have 507 cattle. Well, you give 1 in 500 to the high priest. What about the 7? Well, we didn't do the commandment with them because there's only 7, not 500. We don't want any change. We want every animal to be able to be part of the commandment. And similarly on the Jew side, 1 in 50. They only existed in those numbers of 50 enumeration because we don't want any animal to be out of the commandment. It's because God will do whatever it takes to make sure we can fulfill his commandments. And if we think about this, who knows how many years before God made the grass grow or not, the sun shine or not, the rain or not, the fertility or not, the deaths or not, to create that exactly at that moment when the Jews conquered Midian, the numbers worked perfectly. And that's really a lesson for us in our lives. We see short. God sees very long. And when we're going through things, And we all go through things. We should keep that in mind. God could have prepared the cure for this 10 years ago. And sometimes we see it in our life, like Linda was just saying, that you could look back at your life, or maybe like specifically in Linda's case, your journey to be a Noahide. And you could think of all the pieces that God put into place. This happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. And because this happened, which led to this happening, which led to this happening, which led to this happening, that's how you became a Noahide. And it's not only true for becoming a Noahide, it's true for everything in your life, and especially everything that has to do with your service of God. We see short. God's been planning this for years and years and years. Just so we can understand, by those animals of Midian, years before, God was putting all these factors in place, that the numbers should work out perfectly. And then God continued this watchful eye, that none of the animals die, because that would have messed up the numbers again. Everything has to be perfect. We have to be able to do this commandment completely. And it's so true in our life. So Linda said she sees it in her life. She sees how so many things happened to lead her to become the Noahide she is today, to give her the ability to make that choice. And I'm sure many of us, as a Noahide and also in other areas of our life, we can see God's far-reaching vision. And maybe things that happened years ago that led us to make choices, that brought us to where we are today. And maybe you're in the middle of your story. So if you've seen this, it's very reassuring. And if you've seen it for some things, you can extrapolate for the story you're in the middle of today. And even if you haven't seen it, trust me, it's how God works. So whatever story you're in the middle of, whatever pains and unfulfilled wishes you're in the middle of, you can think the same thought. I see short. God sees very long. God knows what he's doing. God's not abandoning me. He's not dropping me. He's not spaced out. He's totally conscious, totally focused, and totally limitlessly capable for every wish of mine to be fulfilled. And God sees long term. Sometimes it's a long road. This has to happen, and this, for all the pieces to be together to make that fulfilled. But yes, Linda, it's a very deep thought, and it's a very, very strengthening thought. So this Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, we'll just do one more, we probably just begin it. This Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he had 5 students. Now, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the leader of all the Jewish people. Obviously, he didn't have 5 students. He had probably hundreds of thousands of students. But these were his 5 main disciples. And he gave them a certain mission, as we're going to see, or we won't, but trust me on this. He sent them out with various questions, and each one answered as per their soul perspective. So I'm going to ask the question and see what you answer. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to his student, go and tell me, what is the good way that man should cleave to? Meaning, there's lots of good things out there in the world. There's lots of good things we should strive to acquire for ourselves. What is the core? What is the core quality that if you have that quality, that obviously would then have everything else flow from it? What do you think, from your wisdom and your life journey, is a critical quality that if you can tell someone to pick one thing, that's what you're advising them to go for? Any thoughts? It's a hard question. It's a powerful question. If you think of your own life, what would you view as like such a critical quality that when you have that, you know it's going to be okay? Or if you meet a person and they have this quality, you know everything else will come. And if they don't have that quality...
Truth-seeking?
Truth-seeking. Okay, so Natalie says someone who seeks truth. If you seek truth, everything else will come. I like that. That's a great answer. Anyone else?
Going the extra mile.
Pushing yourself the extra mile. That's a very important quality. Very important. That's
kindness.
What did you say, Lisa?
Kindness.
Kindness. A very, very, very tremendous practical virtue. Someone who's going to truly be kind.
Honesty, no matter what the situation,
Honest, even if it hurts.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it hurts. Honesty. Wow. We're making, imagine a person that had all these qualities. Natalie's truth, Dixie's honesty, Sabra's pushing the extra mile, Lisa's kindness. Wow. Like if you had to pick one, I don't know which you'd pick. Anyone else?
Clinging to God
Clinging to God, a
and,
desire to
and
cling to
Torah.
God and Torah. Anyone else? Any other votes out there? I think if I didn't know the answers, I would probably say not this is the answer per se, just what I would probably think of would be humility. I think that's such a God virtue, that when there's a place of humility, then everything else godly can come. Just
That
be
was
God.
Moses, the most
What?
humble of all men. That was Moses, the most humble of all men.
Exactly. He was the absolute embodiment of humility, being also the embodiment of God's wisdom. All right, let me read you the list. We'll see if any of them match any of ours. There are 5 students, so there's 5 answers. The first student said, a good eye, someone who looks at things positively, someone who always can look and see the good in something. That's like the core quality. If you have that, everything else is going to flow. The next person said, a good friend. If you have a good friend, you're good. You have a good friend, one good friend, you're going to be strong, you're going to be supported, you're not alone. Everything else will flow from that. The next one said, see, these not going our direction at all. The next one said, but I loved what everyone said. If Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had asked us, I think he would have gotten great answers too. The next one said, a good neighbor. That's very interesting. A good eye, I understand. A good friend, I understand. A good neighbor, but having experienced not good neighbors, I could sort of understand why it's valuable. Hopefully everyone here only has good neighbors, so they don't even understand. Reb Shimon said, now this was, it's not exactly Sabra's, but I would almost connect it to Sabra's, sort of. Shimon said, it's interesting. He says, someone who considers the consequences of his actions. So Sabra is someone who pushes and pushes himself. In my head, you push and push yourself because you understand the consequence, and therefore you keep pushing to achieve. Someone who considers the consequences of their actions. I could see that, because if you really consider what happens for each thing you do, you would act wisely. You really consider the consequences. And now this might match with Lisa. The final one said, a good heart. The most important quality is a good heart. Lisa said kindness. I think we would probably make synonymous a good heart with kindness. I don't know if a good heart contains any of the other things we said. I'm trying to remember. Dixie said honesty. And Linda said cleaving to God. And Sabra said pushing yourself. And Lisa said kindness. And Natalie said a truth seeker. So I think really Lisa's was the only one that actually matches this good heart. But Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, when he was voting which answer he liked best, Lisa, you got it. He said a good heart. He said a good heart was the best one, because Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said a good heart contains everything else. Like if you have that good heart, all the other virtues we said are going to be within that good heart. That good heart is really like the core of everything else. This is interesting. I would go on to his other questions, but it's a little late. But he continues saying, and what should man stay away from? And, asking them these questions. And again, selecting this point. So just as in terms of what should man stay away from, they all gave various answers. Lo and behold, was the same sage who said the worst quality is a wicked heart. Same way he said the best quality is the good heart. He said the worst quality is that wicked heart. So, of course, if someone has a wicked heart, they're not going to be a truth seeker. And they're not going to be honest. And they're not going to push themselves to have a relationship with God. So all of the virtues we said obviously would be impossible for a person with a wicked heart. Because once you have a wicked heart, that shuts down everything. Just interesting to think of like, core. What's core? What are we looking for? What's core? What are we looking for in ourselves? What are we looking to educate our children with? What are we looking to create in our environment? What's the core? And if we have the core, the other good will follow.